There's armies just like guarding over 1,000 miles into Central Asia from the capital. So we can take our silk and our other products, and we can just go along the garrison route and sell stuff to Central Asia and import stuff from Central Asia. We can make a lot of money. And so the Silk Road starts. It's not like somebody said, hey, let's make a Silk Road. Here's a pretty good map. It goes from Xi'an, or the Han, Western Han capital, over to Persia, to Baghdad, and finally to Rome. Now, there's middlemen all the way through, particularly here in Central Asia, Samarkand and Fergana over here. Notice, here's the Taklamakan here. It's actually almost farther west than India, the Taklamakan. So China really does go almost as far west as India does. But then at this point, there's some pretty hardcore Afghanistan types, Taliban types, even way back then. And so they're the middlemen. You don't go farther than that. You give them your silks, they buy them from you, and they sell them to, at a markup to the Westerners. And Roman glass is found in Han tombs. And Han silks are found in Roman tombs and Egyptian tombs. And just a little bit of trivial, interesting stuff. Rome was so in love with China. Is geography destiny? China had mulberry trees and silkworms. No other geography had silkworms and mulberry trees, which is what's needed to make silk. And so when the Romans saw silk, they were like, good God, that's gorgeous. And the wives of the patricians, the senators, the patricians, the elites, they were like, good God, that's gorgeous, get me some silk. And the senators and patricians themselves wore silk robes. Gold just flowed out of Rome over to the Silk Road into China. And it drained the Roman Empire of gold and is partly a cause of the fall of the Roman Empire. They spent their money on Chinese stuff. It's kind of like America today, right? Happy Meals. No, that's a Stephen Colbert joke. Never mind. Thank you, China, for making our Happy Meals possible. He said, I don't get the joke. No, these luxury goods, they only benefited the court, meaning the royal, the imperial, and the wealthy. And there are problems there. Because notice, Confucius is saying, don't live for profit, don't live for luxury. The Taoists are saying, live simply. But suddenly there's just all of this gold coming in from the Silk Road. And you'll see that will have some consequences later when Jesus comes. So, what's our thesis here?
Unintended consequences.
Okay, the unintended consequences. Second, besides that Silk Road, this is hugely important. As I said, army bases cost money. We like small government in China, and the peasants are not to be exploited. The mandate of heaven stuff, it's deep in our roots now. So if you're not going to tax the peasants, then who are you going to tax in order to fund your army bases? Merchants. Unintended consequences of that. Merchants aren't stupid. They live for profit. They're like, well, there's no profit in buying and selling anymore because they're taxing that. So I'm going to take that money and invest it in land. Because agriculture is not taxed on the same level as luxury goods. And what is the consequence of that? Mao Zedong, in 1949, when he founds the Communist China, has a population, 90% of which is peasants who cannot read. He's got a capitalist United States that hates him and wants nothing more than to bring him down in the Cold War. He's got to consolidate. And from the day of Wu Di to this day, 1949, China is mostly agricultural. Why did China not go commercial? Because Wu Di sort of, with this tax policy, which was just the Shengnu again, how do I keep those damn nomads out? I need money for army bases. And so China will remain agrarian. That agrarian society thing, it's boring, I know. It's beautiful, I know too, and you don't because you don't think about it. Some of you might, but it's beautiful because it's an agricultural society that has these traditions that are just gorgeous and innocent and such. And I love the Chinese working class to this day because there's an innocence about them. Finally, he creates government monopolies. I see you got Mao on your T-shirt because you're a communist too. Death to the man. Bourgeoisie, bourgeois. I'm gonna like rip the bourgeoisie an asshole in a new one in the NHS speech. This is an idiom, to rip a new asshole. You know, I should have said butthole. Pardon me. I'm sorry. I'm an American.
You said you were Chinese.
I know, but I've still got that American thing in me. I'm still part white.
Not sure all Chinese.
No, I'm not all Chinese. I don't even speak the music. I don't speak the music. How can I be Chinese? Okay. So finally, what's the last thing he does? It totally takes the confusions off. He monopolizes the most profitable industries in China. Wine, the Chinese love their drink, and so do the ancestors. Wine was a massive industry. You want to make money, you just start a rice winery. Because everybody buys wine, they like their drink. Not anymore, you can't because the government does it. So you can't do wine sales. That's a government monopoly. Same with iron and salt. So we see, why do I point these things out? Those of you who are interested in communism and all that modern stuff, look how far back the roots go. You'll see over and over, and we haven't even gotten to the real Karl Marx in the middle of the Han. Yeah, so there's the who cares, right? Markets aren't free in China. Wu Di sets the precedent. And whoops. Now, are we done with this part? No, okay, good. And this is where we'll end for today after this last section. Can I ask you to go back up to Liu Bang for a second, because what he did was kind of cool. When the Xiongnu, you know how he kept the Xiongnu out? Because, again, these guys are trying to invade. He had one way of dealing with these, but it wasn't military. What are you going to do to these nomads if you're not going to fight them, and you're a Taoist, and you don't want to like send your people to die, to fight? You just want to be non-interfering.
Like a treaty?
He paid them. Gave them lots of money, and women, intermarriages and such. And a nationalist would say, that's so humiliating. You're paying these barbarians bribes to not attack us? Look how weak you look. But that's what he did. I mention that because you'll see it come back later. And also because it's really interesting that Westerners think, oh, there's no such thing as a country that won't be militaristic. We're scared of China's rise because we think that they're going to be like us. Aggressive, aggressive, aggressive. But the Taoist strain and the Confucian strain are both pacifistic. And so there is hope among some of us that maybe China will be true to its traditions, although it's really hard in the modern world. Finally, government. How do we solve this split between feudalism and centralized bureaucracy? Wu Di does it. I told you the Achilles heel of Zhou feudalism. If you can trace that from the Zhou feudalism to the Qin centralization to Liu Bang splitting the fence to this guy, you are done, and you understand how Qin not only won in terms of commanderies with a centralized bureaucracy, but Wu Di improved it. This is massively important. Make your font real big because it's the end of the class, and I know that you've been listening for quite a while. Don't fade out on this point. This is the most important point of the cementing of China. Not only did he centralize it, which is just making it like Chen Shi Huangdi. I'm not even going to go into the how he did it. It's kind of fun, but it's not real important. Oh, I've got 4 minutes. I will. In a nutshell, he did this. So I've got all these big vassal states, right? I don't want to piss off the vassals by like saying, hey, give me back your state, Catherine. That's going to anger Catherine. So instead I'm going to change the law. No longer does your estate, when you die, go to your oldest son, primogeniture. No longer. Now you have to divide it amongst your surviving sons. What happens to Catherine's estate if she has 10 sons, which is not unusual in a land of concubines? If she dies, what happens to her estate? It's 10 times smaller, right? There's 10 little states now. They have sons. What happens? So you see it like in 2-3 generations. That is so jujitsu ninja. I'm sorry, that's just so ninja. Because then it's easier to come in and gobble, 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 these little bitty states, right? Ending primogeniture and causing them to be divided amongst the sons equally. Here's the big thing, finally. Out with the Taoism and in with the Confucianism. He adopted Confucianism. And that means he adopted the Western Zhou ritual system of the Shu Jing, the Yao Shun and Yu ideal, the mandate of heaven, the whole bit, because Confucius was all about Yao Shun and Yu and the Shu Jing, the Confucian classics. So this is the guy that did it, and it's astonishing if you think about it. Why is the fact that China's Confucian surprising? Because it took until this guy in 100 BC to do it. Confucius died of failure. Oh, we just talked about that. From this guy's time on, from 130 on, China will remain a Confucian bureaucracy. So our social pyramid now, it's easy. Spam is your word. S-P-A-M, because now, on top of that social pyramid is scholar officials. Scholars. Scholars. You want to join the elite and be on top? You're a scholar. If you're a merchant, you're on the bottom. If you're a rich merchant, you're on the bottom in terms of honor. You don't get into the National Honor Society by making a lot of money. You get into the National Honor Society by being a skillful scholar. Good at the 6 arts, too. China will be ruled by scholars for 2,000 years. This is another reason I love this civilization. Because you have to be smart, disciplined, studious, and Confucian to join the elites. That's beautiful to me. And Wu Di did it. Here's our last point. Well, how do I find these scholars? Well, I'm Wu Di. I'm going to start a university, the Imperial Academy. And if anybody wants a job in my government, which is the only way to be an elite, they've got to pass a test where they talk about the things that you've read. Yao Shun and Yu, the Book of Songs, on and on. Stop being absent.